Okay, so first things first, this deck is like actually pretty good. This isn't like a 40 engine cards, 8 bricks, 5 card combo 10 on SP pass kind of deck. This is like a full ass modern combo deck. And I'm actually gonna start off the video with going in depth about why this deck doesn't completely suck. Because convincing someone that the Pendulum deck is like as much as playable is very much fighting an uphill battle. The first point would be engine requirements. Pendulum decks come from a time where combo decks needing a full 5 card hand to end on Decode Talker pointing to 2 monsters was normal, and since the entire mechanic was basically abandoned since 2020, Pendulum decks have kinda not aged very well, because like everything else has like 1 or 2 card combos now. But Dracoslayers finally come with like updated new card design where every card goes like plus 12, which means we can actually like do a full combo with only 2 engine cards, which is really good because that's like a massive boost to not only consistency, because you don't need to open 5 specific cards anymore, but you can also like play non-engine cards now, right? Because you don't need to open 5 engine cards, you just need to open 2, which means you can actually dedicate some deck space to non-engine, don't have to run 60 engine, like pray you go first. Losing the die roll is not a death sentence anymore, which is really nice. And talking about non-engine, Dracoslayers have like a really funny advantage over other decks, which is also semi-related to Electromite. While I'm at it, I might as well clear up the like common misconception that Pendulum bad cause Electromite banned. That's just wrong. I can see why you would think that, because Pendulum started being bad exactly when Electromite got banned, but there's like no causation between that anymore. Like I can assure you, if Electromite comes back to 3 now, Pendulum does not suddenly start becoming a meta deck. In fact, you can kinda argue that Electromite is somewhat obsolete now, because we have pretty much a strict upgrade over that card, right? And Beyond the Pendulum, not only does Beyond add any Pendulum monster without having to like put it in the extra deck and then destroy another card to add it back first, which makes combos that need low amount of engine cards and had like 2 card combos are a lot easier and more common now, because with Electromite you need to have another scale you can destroy to even get the add of any Pendulum from your deck. Beyond doesn't need that anymore, but the most important part of Beyond is like the summoning condition, right? 2 effect monsters including a Pendulum monster, right? Unlike Electromite, who needs 2 Pendulum monsters, right? This half genericness means that you can make Beyond with another Beyond, right? You can link Beyond into Beyond, and you can use to make a Beyond Fenrir, Nibiru, a monster stolen by TTT, Kurikara, and Bestials, and literally like every single non-engine card you can imagine that puts just a body on your field, right? And I don't think I need to go like in detail as to why Fenrir and Nibiru being combo starters is like really good for you. The third point is resilience. Like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Players are really annoying if you post like a combo or an end board, like anything. If you just post a card, if you just post an image of an attribute, like anywhere, someone will go, but what about impermanence, right? But we might as well address the funny, but what about Ash Blossom? People with, this deck is like actually resilient. Like the base combo plays through Nibiru, not only on like straight up through. Like Nibiru is a hand loop for the opponent, like please nib me, go ahead. And also through like Imperm and theyre, you can do stuff. Funnily enough, a correctly targeted Imperm actually hits you harder than the Nibiru, which I find very funny. The deck isn't perfect in terms of resilience. Droll like still really hurts. Like you can make a big Gooska maybe, but like more than half the cards in your deck add a card from deck to hand, so you kinda don't appreciate getting drolled very much. And a correctly timed Ash Blossom hits you about as hard as it does Branded, and trust me, you don't ever want to be compared to Branded. Now that that's done, the guide is split into multiple parts again. We're gonna start off with combos, a lot of them. This time it's like around 10 different combos, playing through hand traps and all that stuff. After that we'll go over a deck profile. Now, both the combos and the deck profile are for the pure version with an Odd-Eyes engine. Did that for a couple of reasons. Dracoslayers don't have a Xenolock or anything like that, which means you can have like infinite variation in terms of hybrid builds and like end board variation and all that stuff. And it's like physically impossible to include all that in this guide, especially because the deck doesn't have a lot, if any, real results. So there isn't like a de facto best version. You can all agree on like this is the way how to play the deck, right? So I have to pick the version that I think is like the best, right, which is also the one I happen to have played. But the good thing about that is even if you do end build variation, and even if you do different hybrid builds, the like base way to play the Dracoslayer cards is gonna stick the same, which means if you learn from these combos and this deck profile, and you watch the section which is right after, which is me like listing all the other things you can do very quickly, not like in-depth combo guides and stuff, just, oh, you can also do this. And from those things you can piece together like all the other hybrid versions. And if you can't piece it together yourself, you know what to look for like somewhere else. After all that, I also have some replays that show like gameplay. These aren't amazing, like let's be real, like this is bad advertising, but you can skip the replays if you really want to. It's like really hard to fetch good replays for videos like this, and I don't want to sit like and play 20 hours of Dracoslayer combos just so I find this like right specific scenario I want to show off. The replays are gonna be some like actual applications on how the deck works, but it's gonna be like against double Dragoon pass, right? So just to keep your expectations a little bit low on that front. And as always, which has turned out to be very relevant, the last guide, there is gonna be a pinned comment with any kind of like add-ons, or, oh, I forgot about this, and oh, I cheated here, although this time I actually did check if all of the combos are legal, so there shouldn't be any cheating going on, but like, just keep in mind, pinned comment is gonna be down below. You should probably look at that. Now we can start looking at all the different combos, starting off with like the basic combo. We're gonna do it with Majesty Pegasus and Ignis Phoenix. Now all the Dracoslayer combos can basically be jump started with like any amalgamation of 2 to 3 engine cards, right? Just Majesty Pegasus and Ignis Phoenix is like the default. This is how we show combos. Like this is the spinny gazelle of this deck, right? A lot of people misunderstand that you need to hardware these to like know all the cards do this just in slightly different ways. But other than like the start of the combo, everything else is gonna be completely the same. We are just, as expected, gonna scale these two up. Then we're gonna activate Majesty Pegasus. Now I'm not gonna go over every single card effect in detail, but some cards warrant a little bit of more explaining. Majesty Pegasus being one of them, because the scale effect is not only like somewhat difficult, it's one of the like weirder effects, right? But it's also really important the way how it works. So the effect can be activated if you have a Dracoslayer in your other scale, and then it adds from deck to hand a Dracoslayer with a different name than the one in this scale, right? Which means Majesty Pegasus can add Majesty Pegasus as long as Majesty Pegasus isn't the one in the other scale. Then after you've added the card from deck to hand, you can destroy either of your scales, right? So Majesty Pegasus basically does it all. Yeah, like you can like make up effects and the card will do it. Right, so we're gonna use Majesty Pegasus, destroy the Ignis at Dynamite Power Load, then Ignis on destruction summons a Dracoslayer from deck and treats it as a tuner. And we're gonna summon Luster Pendulum here, which is naturally already a tuner, so that part didn't really matter. The reason we summon Luster Pendulum here is because it's nice to have the natural tuner in extra deck whenever we need to access it. This comes up a little bit later, you'll see in the combos, sometimes we do need the other tuner. Next we scale the power load, use its effect to summon our other scale from our scale. Then we're gonna use the on summon effect of Majesty to add any field spell from deck to hand and then discard a card. I'm gonna let it do that. We add Sky Iris here, because as you will see, Sky Iris is really good in this deck. Next we sink into Ignis Prominence. Now this is another card that is worthy of a little bit of talking. This card has two effects. Both are soft ones per turn, meaning whenever you summon a new one or whenever you resummon this one, you can use the effects again. The first effect is you can target a pendulum on the field, destroy it, and then shuffle any card from the field into the deck. This is of course really good because it's non-targeting, non-destructive removal, basically the strongest in the game. And the second effect is to summon a Dracoslayer from deck in defense position, which cannot be used as synchro material anymore. Just E-Tally, non-hard once per turn, pretty good, and oh, trust me, we're gonna use that often. So we're gonna use that effect, summon from deck another Dynamite Power Load. This one still matters which one we summon later in the combo, which one we summon from deck hardly matters anymore. This time it still matters because we really want one of these in the extra deck. Next we're gonna link those up into Beyond the Pendulum, which adds any pen from deck to hand, which is gonna be Odyssea. We're gonna talk about what this guy does later. We're gonna scale it and then Pendulum summon 2, being the Dynamite and the Majesty. The Dynamite here matters, like you need to Pendulum summon this one. The Majesty Pegasus can also be the Ignis, it doesn't really matter that much. I usually summon Ignis and I'm going to summon Ignis for the remainder of the combos, but I'm just showing like you can also do Pegasus, doesn't really matter. Then we overlay Intermagister Paladin, use its 2 effects. Effect number 1 on summon searches a pendulum from deck to the hand during the end phase, and the second effect detaches a material to summon a Dracoslayer from extra deck and that then cannot be used as Xyz material anymore. Then we climb into Exceed the Pendulum, on summon adds a pen from the extra deck to hand, and the second effect summons a pendulum from grave or hand to the field with a level between the pendulum scales you currently have. So we're gonna bring back that dynamite. And now we can make an Appaloosa, so now we are like completely Nibiru safe. There will be combos that show how we play through Nibiru. But now we can activate Sky Iris and go into our Odd Eyes place. We're gonna use it, pop the scale to add a Revolution Dragon from deck to hand. Revolution Dragon is another card that has a lot of facts we need to talk about. The 2 that matter are 1, the effect in hand, discard itself, take 500 damage, or rather pay 500 life points. Then add a Dragon Pendulum, level 8 or lower from deck to hand. This can search Luster Pendulum, which of course jumpstarts your combos, so this is a starter card. The second effect is in the scale. You can destroy itself to target a Dragon Synchro, Xyz or Fusion monster in your graveyard and summon it back. And there's a pretty good one lying there, right? So we're gonna use the discard effect first. Right, add Arc Pendulum Dragon, scale that, use Seer's effect, destroys itself to activate Revolution Dragon. Then that triggers Arc Pendulum Dragon, who summons Dissolver from deck. Now Dissolver allows us to fusion summon, including our scales. So we're gonna use that and make a Vortex Dragon. This is an Omni Negate. Then we can use the scale effect of Revolution Dragon, bring back the Prominence, use Prominence effect again to summon a Majesty from deck. Then we Contact Fuse into Dynastar Power. This triggers the Dynamite, it was tributed, so it adds another Dracoslayer from extra deck back to hand. Then the Dynastar effect summons a Dracoslayer from grave or hand and it cannot be used as fusion material anymore. Then we normal summon, well, we make 38 first. Which order you do this doesn't matter. We make 38 as an interruption, this is a spell negator. Then we can normal summon, because we actually haven't done that yet. And we can link those 2 into an IP Masquerena. You could also make a Dweller here if you wanted to. And now I do have to say real quick that there is a slightly different way to do this. You can like swap the order of doing your Dracoslayer plays and doing your Odd Eyes plays around, and that way you end with 1 less follow-up. But in exchange you also have a Dweller, like Dweller plus Mask. This combo is too similar to like make another whole showcase in this video, so if you want to take a look at it, I'm gonna link it in the description below. But for now we're gonna get to the end phase, get another follow-up, and then we can look at the end bot a little bit, because there's a little bit of extra depth to us, right? This is of course just interruptions, but the nice thing is, usually the weakness of Appaloosa and IP is that they can easily be run over, right? Because they're like really small. But 38 has another secret effect, where if your opponent attacks a monster you control, you can detach a material to redirect the attack to 38. So if they like summon a 1700 monster thinking they can run over Appaloosa, you can just redirect that into 38 and now they lose the monster. Right, like 38 plus Appaloosa and Mass is like a really oppressive end board, which makes this really good. Of course you also have 2 remaining cards from your starting 5 as well as 2 follow-up. So this is a really good end board. Now we're gonna start looking into how to play through and around hand traps. Right, we're gonna start off with 5 different ways to interact with Imperm or Veiler. The first one is gonna be them firing Imperm on Beyond. This is generally the most hand trap negati part of your combo because everyone knows Beyond. FYI, if they do Imperm this, right, you just get a Pendulum monster from somewhere else, you normal summon one, you activate a face-off, something like that. Right, but if they do this point Imperm the Beyond, I'm just gonna not activate it in this combo. You can activate your Sky Iris, you can Sky Iris pop the Beyond, get the Revolution, scale the Revolution, Revolution bring back the Prominence, Prominence can activate again, and then we just make another Beyond, right? Funnily enough, this card is not hard once per turn, so we can just use that effect, right? And basically nothing ever happened. Now this does impact our end board a little bit, because we had to use our Sky Iris prematurely, right? But you're gonna see how exactly that affects. I'm just gonna let the combo run for you. Alright, so that's it. We literally just lost the Vortex Dragon, which means our opponent could have as well just held the Imperm in their hand. Right, so this deck, if they do Imperm on Beyond, has a very good interaction with that Imperm. The next combo is again through Imperm on Beyond. We're going to look at some different Imperm spots later. This one is just a slightly different way to execute the combo, which switches up which negate you're actually missing out on. Right, I can also just let this combo play for you, there's nothing much to explain. Alright, so as you can see, we did a little bit of a trade here. We traded our Masquerena for a Vortex Dragon and lost all of our follow-up. This isn't particularly ideal, right? Especially losing the follow-up, right? And just trading an interruption for a different one isn't particularly great. But if you know you really need that Vortex Dragon here, like you need multiple spell trap negates, you need a trap negate to begin with, this can be an alternative way you can do the combo. Now the next Imperm combo functions a little differently. This assumes your opponent guesses correctly and hits the right card, because as it turns out, Imperm on your Field Space Searcher hurts a lot more, right? But you can still play through that, and we're going to look at exactly how. Right, so as you can see, this is quite a decent amount worse than the other Imperm combos, losing out on both your big negates, right? It's still a decent hand-to-end on, right? You didn't discard for cost, which means you get to keep your other hand card, you still have your follow-up, right? And this is still like good interrupts. But there are ways to circumvent this whole problem. If you have an additional low scale, you can play a lot further, and I'm gonna show you how. Right, so as you can see, this one low scale we had traded for a 38, which of course 38 with these two makes your end board significantly better. But there's a potentially even better way to play around and through Imperm, in case you do have the setup for it available in your hand. The interesting thing we're gonna do here is actually we're not gonna use the dynamite effect, we're gonna normal summon any level 4. And we can just keep playing from here like regularly, and this will allow us to have this Dynamite, Summon Majesty Pegasus, and then Search the Field Spell available at any time, right? Which means you got Prominence here, they Imperm, okay, summon this from the scale, make Beyond. They Imperm the Beyond, okay, summon this from scale, make another Beyond, right? And you actually don't have to summon this until you make your Appaloosa, right? I can let this play real quick and you see you can wait really long with actually getting this out of the scale. And there we go. right? We made our Palooza, only after that we actually had to summon the Majesty Pegasus, which gets us a Sky Iris, meaning that this very likely is not gonna eat an Imperm or Veiler. It cannot eat a Veiler, but it's also very likely not gonna eat an Imperm, because you can't tell me your opponent isn't gonna Imperm, right? Until then. This in general is a pretty strong play. It also helps against all kinds of other hand traps, like for example Nibiru. If they Nibiru you, having your scales ready as extenders is really nice. Talking about Nibiru, we have really strong plays through that dumb card, right? And we're gonna look at those now. Now our opponent can of course Nibiru us at a vast amount of different times, but we're gonna look at the two extreme cases, and this time a Nibiru as late as possible and a Nibiru as early as possible. We're gonna start with the Nibiru as late as possible. And we're just gonna eat it here. Funnily enough, the dynamite actually triggers of attributing from Nibiru, which is really funny and comes up like very often, basically always, right? But from here on out I can just let it run. Right, so as you can tell, Nibiru didn't really do anything. It basically 1-for-1 traded with one of our interruptions. Well, technically 2, because it's Appaloosa, right? But compared to what Nibiru usually causes, this is like really good. Like, this deck doesn't really care about Nibiru at all, which is one of the main things why I like the Odd Eyes engine so much. Is completely disjointed with the rest of your setup. You can just at any point start doing Odd Eyes plays, right? Even after you got Nibiru'd. Right, so now we're gonna take a look at the earliest possible Nibiru. Technically not possible because they can just chain Nibiru to beyond, but why would they do that? So the earliest real possibility to Nibiru is directly after your Pendulum summon, and it's gonna go pretty similar. Right, so as you can see, Nibiru did the exact same thing again. It's just 1-for-1 traded for one of our interruptions. Technically 2 again, because IP is technically 2 interruptions. Right, but you get the gist, right? Nibiru doesn't really do a lot against this deck, which is really nice. Next, we take a look at one of the more annoying cards, one of the people keep listing when you show them combo. Droll hurts this deck a lot, but you are able to still somewhat make plays, so we're gonna look at those right now, right? We're gonna scale up, do our search, and then get rolled. Right, and now we have to get a little bit creative, right? So the thing that I think you really want to make this work is another normal summon, right? Because if you get another body with this dynamite, you don't have scales, because you can fetch another scale with beyond. Of course, this drastically changes if you have more engine cards in your hand, right? If you have 5 engine cards, oh, you are playing through Droll like nothing else, right? But in this case, we do need another normal summon with bonus star, so we can make our IP Masquerena, then scale up, and then Pendulum summon. Now what you can do here is, if you have a really good Beguska matchup, you can just make Beguska here, and Beguska Mask is really oppressive, because they have to play under Beguska, and once they finally find their Beguska out, right, you can just activate IP, and now you have 2 interruptions, right? So for certain decks that's already really annoying to deal with, but if you don't want to do it, if you have like a really bad Beguska matchup, you can try to keep playing here. Right now I'm just activating some effects to show for like, oh, you can still somewhat make plays. Here specifically, I'm gonna end on like 38 and a monster to use with Mask, right? But once again, depending on what exactly you have, you can make other stuff. Now we're actually going to look at a different way to start a combo, a one that differs a lot, and this is the odd ice cards. This is to show how they're not as bad as you might think they are, right? You just see them and think, oh, that's like 5 breaks. They actually have a use beyond that. They can actually start your combos, right? In this case, Joker plus Sia can actually do really neat things, right? You can actually start your turn with your odd ice setup. Now you're gonna notice a really neat thing here, right? You have a Luster Pendulum in hand, and you have a Vortex on field and another body. If any of these 3 cards is basically any Dracoslayer, you have full combo protected by a Vortex Dragon, which is really, really good. Otherwise, you can also, right, start your combo from here, make a Beyond, right? This gets you your Majesty Pegasus, right, and you can kind of do a combo in reverse. Keep in mind, Revolution Dragon can also summon back this Vortex, so it isn't lost, right? You basically just switch the order of Dracoslayer and Odd Ice cards, right? The Odd Ice cards are still not amazing to draw, right, but they do good stuff like this. And for our last combo, this is nothing too generic, right? Not like a basic combo I'm showing off, just like it shows how good Fenrir is in this deck, or in general, the non-engine cards that summon themselves, right? So you can make Beyond with them. And it shows once again how good the odd ice cards are. I'm just gonna let this play, alright? And you're gonna see like why I chose to include this, right? We just essentially this is 1 engine card and 4 non-engine, right? And this is gonna play. Right, so as you can see, for a hand that initially looked like a complete brick, this is like really, really good. Not only do you end on 3 to 4 interruptions, but you also have some follow-up searched, right? Keep in mind this can also bring back Vortex Dragon on the next turn, which is a lot of immediate pressure, right? And you do still have 3 cards in your hand, right? If you started with this hand, this is probably 3 non-engine, so this is, despite being just Joker plus Fenrir, a really, really good board. Now for the deck profile, first I probably have to address the elephant in the room, being like this funny number up here, like the 46, why am I playing 46 cards? The idea behind that was there are a decent number of cards that aren't like particularly ideal to draw, right? We're gonna go over it later why they aren't as bricky as they might initially look, but still like I would prefer to have a starter in my hand over fucking Pendulum Dragon, right? And Dracoslayers have the nice thing where they share a lot of archetypes, like this is a Magispectre, this is an Ignite, and this is a Dynamist, right? So you can keep adding engine cards to your deck, right? And you also can keep adding non-engine cards to your deck, right? Because we haven't run out of the good ones yet, right? So by adding more engine cards that aren't significantly worse than our already existing engine cards, and by adding non-engine cards that are also good, we essentially do nothing except lower the chances to draw the cards we don't really want to draw, which is why I'm playing 46. Just to essentially reduce the chance of drawing a Garnet by a little. Now for the card by card, I don't think I have to explain why I'm playing like 3 of all the good Dracoslayers. Right? There are 5 main deck Dracoslayer monsters that are like relevant. Right, and I'm playing 3 of all the good ones. I should, if anything, explain why I'm not running 3 or any Master Pendulum. I can pull it up real quick. If I could type. Right, this one. The reason is it kind of just sucks. Right, like every card, like until this Odd Ice Revolution Dragon, everything's like a starter. These are like all good cards that I always want to draw. And Master isn't better than any of those cards. Right, so cutting any of these for a Master is just not valid, right? There's no reason to do that. It does suck that much because 1, it's a normal monster, which means you can't make Beyond with it. 2, it's a low scale with a suboptimal scale effect. When you make Beyond, you always want to have a occupied high scale and unoccupied low scale, and Master Pendulum often does the exact opposite, occupying your low scale, not occupying your high scale, and don't kind of want to do that, right? So it's not the worst card ever. Technically you can play it, but it's just not great either, Right? If you want to like push this list to 60, surely there will be one of those in there, but like you don't need to push this to 60. Right? And this is why I'm not playing a Master Pendulum. Bumbuku obviously searches your best monster, right? Majesty Pegasus is just the best Dracoslayer. It searches any Dracoslayer and it also pops the Dracoslayer, right? This is really good, so having another card that accesses Majesty Pegasus is very good. Unfortunately, it's not level 4. The fact that it's level 3 is annoying sometimes. A decent amount of times it means you can make Prominence before you can make Beyond, right? And as you've seen from the combos, making Prominence before Beyond can be quite important. But the value of searching your best card is worth at like slight backdraw of it not being level 4. Now Joker, however, is level 4, right? Joker can grab you your Revolution Dragon, you discard Revolution Dragon and then grab you a Luster, right? So Joker is essentially a starter as well, and this one is actually level 4. Right, it doesn't search your card as good, but the level is more ideal, which is why in terms of power it's about equal to Bumbuku. Rhoda is just there to search another Ignis Phoenix. Dynamist Charge searches another Dynamite power load, right? If you want to play even more engine, you can play more of these, right? But I'm fine with 46. Like, this is hard once per turn as well, and it's not like Dynamite is like the greatest card ever. If this would search Majesty Pegasus, I would play 3 of this. But as it is now, right, just 1 is fine. You can play more if you want to. Draco Face-Off I've been a hater of for the longest time, right? Because not only do you need to play like a very unoptimal card to run, essentially a vanilla monster, but there's also a RNG element to how the card resolves, and both those things sound like really bad. But the thing is, even with those drawbacks, the card is kinda too good not to play. Because like, at worst, it's a strictly better Curtain Raiser, right? Do I need to pull up Curtain Raiser, right? In case people don't know what Curtain Raiser does, it's just a free body if you control no monsters, right? And worst case, Draco Face-Off is also a free Pendulum body, right? Except you don't have to start with it. And at best, Draco Face-Off is a Rhoda that doesn't search, or an E-Tally for like every monster in your deck, and that is just way too good to not run it, even considering the drawbacks. Revolution Dragon is a starter, right? You pitch it, search Luster, it's an extender because it brings back your guys. It's also a combo requirement, like you use it in your combo, right? That all considered, like you run 3 of this, right? Starter, extender, combo requirement. That's pretty good card, isn't it? Now for let's call it the unfortunate cards. The cards you don't really want to see in your hand that much. Now playing 5 bricks might sound like really bad, like really bad, but it's not as bad as it might look. Like, I don't want to sugarcoat it like, oh, it's fine. Actually, Luster plus Arc Pendulum is a full combo. Like, no, it's not. But Pendulum decks kind of operate differently from all other decks, right? And this card doesn't have any effects, right? But it's still a level 4 Pendulum monster. You can still normal summon it to make your Prominence, right? You're not that normal summon reliant. You can still scale it and Pendulum summon. You can still Pendulum summon it as a body, right? It's not, despite not having an effect, this card doesn't do nothing, which helps a lot in this, right? And this kind of goes for all of these. We'll go through them one by one and like kind of cope on why they're not that bad. Sky Iris, if you draw this, that means you don't have to discard a card from Majesty Pegasus. It means you don't have this choke point of Majesty Pegasus getting impermed. That usually hurts a lot, right? If you draw Sky Iris, they can't imperm this. And Sky Iris in like very specific scenarios can help you out to like play, right? Let's say you have Majesty Pegasus and Ignis, right? You activate Majesty Pegasus, you get ashed, right? You're having a branded moment, then you activate Sky Iris and pop that Ignis Phoenix, and now you can try to keep playing. Right, so Sky Iris is not ideal to draw. It's probably the best of the bunch to draw, right? It's technically, if you squint really hard, this is a starter card. Right, so it's not even really a brick. It's just a card ideally you don't draw. Now, Lector, right, I basically went over this already. Right, this is basically a vanilla, right? It's just an extra body. Right, because it's a Pendulum, it isn't a completely dead draw, but you still wouldn't like to see it. This is not that bad. Well, these 3 I'm gonna go worst to best. Like, the worst by far is the Silver. It has an awful level. You can't normal summon this, you can Pendulum summon this, and its scale is also completely unusable. Like, this is like the one proper dead draw. Like, drawing this does not fucking do anything. Right, the best use for drawing this is use it as your discard for Majesty Pegasus, because Arc Pendulum Dragon can also summon it from the graveyard. So in the end, you technically don't lose anything from drawing it, because you need to discard a card anyway, so now you can discard a bad card. Okay, but this is like, yeah, you can complain about this one. This is just a dead draw. Right, Arc, Pendulum Dragon, and Odyssey are a bit different. As I showed in the combo before, like opening, some of these can be pretty decent because it means you can potentially start your combo with a Vortex Dragon, and it makes actually some unplayable hands playable. That's pretty nice. Right, and that's also the extent of what Arc Pendulum does. Like, it's a higher scale. Like, it technically fixes bricked hand, but it's the reason the hand is bricked. Right, it's not ideal, but because it's a pendulum, it works out. Like, it isn't a literal garnet. Honestly, is like without copium actually fine to draw. For the same reason of Arc Pendulum Dragon, except this is always your Beyond Search. Well, not always, like 99.9% of the time this is your Beyond Search. And 99.9% of the time, Beyond is also the target for like Imperm, right? Which means if you have this already in your hand, you essentially blank a Veiler, blank an Imperm, which makes Odyssey like a very copium called by the grave, right? So in the end, you play 5 quote-unquote bricks, but a pendulum brick is a lot less of a brick than a brick in like different decks, is what I'm trying to say. It's not as bad as it looks. Now for non-engine, this is just the non-engine that I used to play, right, the last time I played this deck. Fenrir, of course, has the special synergy of being a starter by being able to make Beyond. The same for Nibiru, the same for TTT, and the other cards that do the same I already mentioned, like Abystial's Kurikara, right, do the same thing, right. I just didn't play them in this list, right, but keep those in mind. If those are ever good in the format, they are especially good for Pendulum. Now for the extra deck, we have 2 prominents. You obviously use one turn 1, and it's very nice to have one for like turn 3. Because it's, right, it summons one from deck, right, it spins cards from the opponent. This is a generally really good card. There are also very rare scenarios. A scenario is so rare that I can't name a single one, where you want to summon 2 on turn 1. This gets more relevant in like Zealanders combos, where you want to maximize value off of that and play more balls to the wall. I'm emptying my entire extra deck turn 1. But in this deck, just 2 is enough, right? Very rarely use 2 turn 1. Otherwise, you just have 1 for turn 3 over. Dynastar is an engine requirement, use them in your main combo. Vortex is your end board piece. Magister Paladin, just 1, because once again, it's part of the combo. One thing I want to bring up is you can technically play 2. Before you make your mask, you make another one of Magister. Then use Magister to get another body to make your mask then, right? Just mask with extra steps, but those extra steps give you another add of any pendulum monster on your end phase. So we essentially sacrifice an extra deck slot for another follow-up card. I generally find that unnecessary, but it's something you can do if you find yourself having the extra deck space. Dweller is an alternative to Mask essentially, right? Instead of your Mask, you can go into Dweller if either the format says Dweller is just really good, or you know what your opponent is on, or if you want to forsake some of your follow-up, you can just make both instead, right? Which is also going to be really good. Like if you know that you don't need follow-up, you can FTK your opponent with like Dweller, Mask, and all your other shit. You can just make that instead. Beguska is literally just plan B in this deck. If you get like Droll, or if you're hard brick, you can maybe make a Beguska and hope you win. 38 is just standard endboard piece. 2 Beyond, we've seen why 2 Beyond is good, right? You can make Beyond into Beyond if you get hand trapped. Other than that, Beyond is obviously a really good card turn 3, because it also has the pop 2 cards effect, I don't forget that. IP and SP are your endboard pieces, right? And SP technically can also be a board breaker. Now, if you don't have SP, which is like fine, right? This deck is also extremely budget. Like SP is the only card in this entire deck that is like remotely money. Right? You can just replace this with the Unicorn. Although if that's the case, you might want to actually blind Dweller instead of going into that Unicorn, right? But just let it be known, not having SP is like not the end of the world. This deck doesn't rely on SP as much as potentially other decks do. Exceed, also really good card. I would like to play 2 of this, but we just don't have the space, right? Other than that, it's just a really good combo requirement. Appaloosa is obviously part of your endboard piece, and Access Code is there to just turn all your random Dracoslayer bodies flying around into like actual removal and damage. For the side deck, this is just a regular side deck I played, right? These are not worthy of any specific mention, right? These are just format dependent. The one thing here that does need mention is like Guiding Ariadne and Solemn Judgment, right? What you can do here is you set this in going first, post-siding, then instead of Seer, you can grab Ariadne, then pop this with either Sky Iris or Prominence, and that will search your Solemn Judgment. And that will help you play against like Dark Ruler, because your usual board just hard loses to Dark Ruler. There's nothing you can do, right? You do have follow-up and you don't die, right? You would like your board to not be entirely turned off. The nice thing about this especially though is that, right, you can side these 4 in, right? You side in 4 Solemn Judgments, then if you draw this, you can Beyond search this instead. Then if you have Joker in full combo, you can Joker search Seer, and then Beyond search Ariadne. So you side in for Solemn Judgment, but in reality you have like 8 Solemn Judgments in your deck, which is really cool. For other side deck cards that have like specific, like a real proper synergy, I don't think there are anymore that are like mention worthy. If I do remember some more cases I've just completely forgotten, I will either put them on screen now or put them in the pinned comment based on when I remember them. Okay, now we're gonna take a quick look over all the variations you can do, at least all the ones that are like semi-relevant and I know of, which should be the very most of them. First of all, which is probably the most popular alternative way to play the deck, is with a Superheavy Samurai engine, right? I think to no one's surprise, the like powerful Synchro Pendulum engine works well in the Pendulum Synchro deck. Like, I think I don't need to go in depth as to why those cards are good. Now, that engine did get a pretty significant hit with the Baron and Savage bans, but I don't think that's gonna hinder it all too much. And I always thought the All-Ice version was better, and now it's gonna be even better than Superheavy Samurai, but you can still use Super Heavies if you want to. In the same vein, you can now probably run a Melodious engine, right? People already use the Melodious engine in ways very similar to how they would use the Superheavy Samurai engine. And it's not something I would personally do necessarily, but it's something you can do, and that's probably works out. Like, Ostinato is a pretty good card. Magispectors also have some inherent synergy with the deck, because like your best Dracoslayer is a Magispector monster, right? And you already play Bambuku, so you can just play more Magispector cards. This allows you to like end on a board that has like back row interruption, so you play through like Dark Ruler and stuff, and also technically gives you more consistency, because Yata can fetch Bambuku, and Bambuku can fetch Majesty Pegasus, so you have essentially 3 more copies of Majesty Pegasus, right? That's a nice consistency boost. Magispectors tend to need a lot of like bricks, like cards you don't really want to draw, like all the back row, like you don't want to have that in your hand. So Magispectors are kind of like a high roll balls to the wall. Like if you play Magispectors, you're probably going to 60 cards and like probably even culling all the non-engine. Like Magispectors, like for fun, you just want to like play Solitaire. Like, if you really want to go back to, like, the old bad Pendulum, like, be my guest, Magispector is the thing for you. Now, in terms of endboard variations, Zealantis is probably the card you have to look at the most. Zealantis is, like, really good in this deck, right? Because if you don't know what Zealantis does, it banishes everything, then brings it all back. Essentially, resetting, in quotation marks, all your soft ones per turns. Like, if you have your Dracoslayer Fusion and Synchro, you use both, you make Zealantis, and then now you can use both again. Like, that's really good. The only issue is that it eats a lot of extra deck space, right? Because you not only need to play Zealantis, you need to play the cards you want to make with that Zealantis, which very often is a Singularity Dragon, right? Because you have all that linked material just floating around and you don't know what to do with it. Now, if you play Zealantis, you can obviously go into the Fire OTK with Princess and Raging Phoenix. Princess, of course, having extra synergy because Ignister Prominence is a fire monster, which means you get another proc of that. Here, the issue once again that I try to put this in my deck, it's just the extra deck space is not there, right? If you want to play a Zealantis, you need to like really build everything around that Zealantis, and that can sometimes backfire, like maybe having to cut the All-Ice cards, etc., which offer you a lot. So that's not entirely ideal, but the option is there, and Zealantis is the build that actually got the deck its 1 YCS top. That deck also included 2 different ways that the deck is being played. One is the deck actually ended on Seals to go into a Morphage Sloth. Yeah, Sloth was the one. To just floodgate your opponent out. And the deck also had a very heavy focus on field spells, because obviously Majesty Pegasus can search any field spell in the game. So if you're not very reliant on Sky Iris, you can search like Secret Village of the Spellcasters or Necro Valley or Zombie World and completely knock your opponent out, right? You can, if you don't want to main that, you can put it like in the side deck, right? Just note that in this version I'm playing specifically, Sky Iris is like really, really important, so you probably do not want to replace it with a different field spell, even if it's a really powerful one that like locks your opponent out of the game. Right, because locking your opponent out of the game doesn't mean much if you can't really play yourself.